Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome back to Projections. It's been
Too long.
Too long, way too long. That's why you're gonna get not only this episode this week, but another episode later this week because it's Oculus Connect.
OC5.
It's going on right now if all things go to plan. And Jeremy and I are actually in San Jose right now, speaking with developers, hopefully trying out some new games and new hardware.
Probably seeing all the things you're reading about right now in today's news.
But this episode is to recap some of the games that we were able to play at a special press preview event 1 week ago.
Yeah, I wonder why they did this, because they've never done this before, which is great, because last year we didn't even get to see all the games at OC4. This gave us a chance in a couple of hours, like 3 hours to spend with a lot of these games. I wonder if they're concerned that maybe the news cycle will be owned by some new announcement.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about some of the games. These are all Oculus Rift titles, many of them brought to you by Oculus Studios, funded by Oculus and Facebook themselves, but some of them will also be on some other platforms as well.
Yeah.
We'll start off with a first game called Vox Machinae.
You're right, you knew about this game already, and in fact, there's a chance we might get in on the beta for this game.
Yes.
But there's also a chance, I guess everybody will, starting today, which is it's now open access. Early access.
Yeah. That's right. And this is a mech game. We've wanted mech games in VR for a very long time, even before we had track controllers.
Yeah.
With Game Pass, we wanted mech games. And developers of this, three-person development team, have made a very true to Mech Warrior style, slow lumbering mech game.
Yeah, it definitely is on the sim side of the arcade sim balance beam. And it works quite well at doing that. In fact, I think I'm going to enjoy playing this game once I learn to restrain myself and take my time and play it stealthily and be concerned for your health and that kind of thing, because you're lumbering across the battlefield.
Yeah.
And you're reaching out to use your controls, and you're using your jump jets sparingly. And it's actually a lot of fun. You can pull down a sniper scope kind of a screen in order to zoom in on your enemy and fire at them. But you can also easily take damage, and it's location specific. So you lose an arm, you lose a leg. So it's going to be a matter of finding cover, using it wisely. But definitely a fun sim-style mech game. I thought it was very promising.
And what makes it a sim is its use of the cockpit. We've known for a long time, cockpit games in VR not only enhance comfort, but also can enhance immersion. And a lot of the cockpit games we've seen, especially for the space combat games, the cockpit's really superficial, just for comfort. They're just aesthetically there. Even in games like Elite Dangerous, while you're moving around, you can look at screens, you're not really interacting with them with your hands.
Right, you're using a gamepad usually. Yeah.
Here, you're actually picking things up. You're grabbing sticks and moving them left and right. Even though the sticks don't exist in your real space, you need to move them and actually move like a throttle system, up and down. You're grabbing a knob to launch up and move laterally.
The jump jets work by grabbing it, pulling it up, and then as like an analog joystick.
Yeah, it's one of those games where if you had a track true controller to this, it would be even more immersive. But I was surprised that even with virtual things that you're grabbing with your touch controller, it was still, the haptic feedback was enough, so you can not look at your control and still know where it is.
Right.
Even communications, a radio to talk to your teammates.
You and I share the same concern about this game, which is the level of competition is going to ramp up and become very, very hard to
which could ruin the fun.
Jump in as a noob, and I am afraid I will always be a noob at mech games, despite how much fun they are.
Yeah.
So I think since I'm really glad that they have bots, because that will allow people like you and me to sync up, do a private match against enemy AIs, and just have fun.
There'll be 3 game modes to launch with this, but we talked to developers, and hopefully we're gonna get some co-op modes, because I'd love to do a mech-based, wave-based co-op mode, or with things with scale, because you're supposed to be towering above the landscape. So to make you feel more like you're a giant mech, I would love to see airplanes and vehicles at smaller scale that you could be destroying as well. A lot of potential, a lot of fun. That's Vox Machinae, out now in early access.
Let's talk about the first thing we saw, which wasn't even playable.
No.
It was the trailer for Lone Echo 2, but cleverly they showed it in the Oculus Go as a 360 video using that cool new 5K John Carmack magic, where it's a really, really high resolution video. You can look in any direction and it resolves very well. I'm sure that's probably out now too. People are downloading and checking that out. But that was fun to see. That not only is Lone Echo in development, but we get our first taste of it.
That was one of the best single-player experiences we've had in the first wave of touch controller Oculus games, and the fact that they can take those same assets and develop the story further. VR is now in the second generation, third generation of titles.
Yeah. But related to that, we got to play Echo Combat, and not just the Echo Combat we've all been playing in beta off and on when they do their open betas, but a new mode, which is it's a capture point mode. Do you remember what they called this mode itself?
It's very much like a King of the Hill
Yeah,
style
right.
mode, where in the first Echo Combat beta, it's an escort mode. The Flamingo, you move along a track. This is a new map, and the devs told us the maps will be designed for the mode specifically. Still 3v3, but there's a volume of space that your team must occupy and hold for a period of time to win.
So you're not progressing through a map in the way that you were with the escort mode. You're all converging on this center point. And interestingly, it's locked down for the first minute of the game, but everyone's out there. You're free to fire at your opponents or just take cover and try to stay alive in order to get in that zone. There's a risk-reward balance going on there, and we had a lot of fun with it. We obviously didn't know the maps as well as the developers, so we got trounced, but there's a lot of promise there. I'm really glad to see that they're doing more maps and more game modes, because Echo Arena, as awesome as it is, there's one map that they've had since launch. And to see them evolving not only the actual gameplay to add weapons, but modes as well and maps, fantastic.
They also didn't say that it would be one map per mode, right? Without promising how many maps and how many modes, they said that if you like the escort mode, there will be more maps potentially for that as well. I think they're really designing for competitive play, because they know from Echo Arena that people can get really good.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those easy to learn, but it's going to be tough to master, especially for people who are actually rotating in ZeroG and playing upside down. You can attack this control point, not just 180, 360, but also up and down, 6 degrees of attack for this. So from there, we started playing different games. Well, there were a lot of things to try.
Yep, we split
up. The game I played next was Defector, which is a game from Twisted Pixel. They did Wilson's Heart, that horror-style adventure game. And we played Defector at one of the levels earlier.
I want like 9 months ago or so,
Yeah.
maybe less than that. But it was kind of a Jason Bourne experience. And interestingly, you could take diverging tracks and make certain choices and maybe experience the game differently than someone else would.
Right. The devs described to us as trying to capture the feel of being in one of these action films. So the level I played tried to capture the feel of in a chase sequence. You've seen this in Mission Impossible, in the James Bond movies, what it feels like to tail and follow a person through a crowded city.
Okay.
Now, it was set in India. I don't think it really captured that exhilaration. It was a lot of slow walking. You're not running to chase a person.
Okay.
It's just really kind of walking through. The level didn't seem too populated, and it was kind of a very straightforward, linear follow experience.
And what was the locomotion like? How was the walking experience? Was it click and walk, or was it?
It was just hold your controller, hold the button down, hold the thumbstick down.
Okay.
And Defector will have a lot of different locomotion options.
Got it.
For head movement, head direction, or pointing direction.
Yeah.
But it was very, very measured in the following. And at certain points, there would be obstacles, so you would have to punch through a door, for example, or you would confront your target, and then you would engage a little bit of a fisticuffs, where you would have to punch them to move to the next part.
Their body areas light up where you're supposed to hit and things like that?
It's a cat and mouse thing where they hit you, you block, and then you punch them in the face or the gut or slam them against the wall.
It doesn't sound like it was amazing.
No,
Okay.
it wasn't a great boxing experience. I thought it was a little more felt more like a quick time event. And in the following the enemy, the person you're supposed to tail, it was a little bit boring to me. The most fun I had in this sequence was with some grappling, climbing up some pipes.
Right. I remember in the demo we played, you jumped out of an airplane and you could grab onto another one.
Right.
And then you climb up that. So they had that climbing
They
mechanic.
have a little bit of the climb mechanic, and I wish this was more like climbing. Because climbing, it's your speed.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm perfectly comfortable
Yeah.
chasing someone. So I don't know if this level is for me.
It's always hard because it was one level, right?
Yeah.
So it's always hard to say, they took a vertical slice of an entire game. They were proud of this slice in the context of the whole game.
Sure.
And that's what you got to play. So obviously we reserve judgment until we get to see the whole experience. But yeah, fingers crossed.
Yep.
I got to play a game called Final Assault. Now the word final has something in common with another game they made for VR, Final Approach, which old school VR heads will remember. from the Vive like pre-days, right? This was like an early game where you could grab your planes and drag a path in front of them and have them land at airports in various places. It was a really novel concept, a concept that required VR. You couldn't imagine playing this on the gamepad. Well, now they have an RTS game, which uses some of the same kind of mechanics. It's called Final Assault. And they told me that they were frustrated because so many people that played the earlier game never got to the combat in that game, which came late, including me. I had no idea, so I had to apologize. I was sorry for that, and they said, well, we're sorry you missed it too. So that's what you get now in this RTS game. And it's cute. It's like having your own little war set, and you have this huge encampment in the back and your opponent over there, and you drag the world to move around, right? Interestingly, moving around the world is not one-to-one. So if I grab the ground and pull, it moves sort of at the same rate as my hand, but more than. So I move like twice as much distance. They said they have a slider for that. I wasn't affected by it at all. I was very comfortable with it. But it was an interesting new approach to moving around the space.
It was an acceleration physics base. We can drag and let go and have it
There
slide.
wasn't momentum, and I actually requested that at the end of my experience with it, because I feel like that's the one thing that would add a little more comfort to it. But I was able to move around quickly regardless. But there's no resource management. It's a really sort of a straightforward RTS. There's no leveling up of your units. So you have a pad in one hand, and you drag your units off of it, and you drop them into the world. If you drop them onto these green arrow paths, then they automatically follow that path to the goal of whatever that is. If you drag them somewhere else, they'll just go there. You can drag them straight on top of enemies, and they'll attack them, that kind of thing. You have tanks and aircraft and jeeps, and it just automatically spawns infantry. So it's kind of a very approachable RTS game. My hope is that the difficulty scale in the game rises, and that they unlock newer units as it goes on. The inability to level things up or to manage resources seems like it might be a little too simple. So I'm wondering, what are they going to do to make the gameplay ramp up and remain interesting? But that's one to watch. It's a really fun game. It's a good-looking game.
We haven't seen a ton of RTS games in VR. Brass Tactics is probably the most recent, most notable one, and I think it's the challenge of getting people interested to see how can you enjoy this type of environment at that scale.
Right.
You have this God view of your play area, and how can you make the strategy actually feel rewarding and also take advantage of VR?
So far, this and Brass Tactics are both more about micromanaging and maybe that's just a matter of being in VR, having a slower interface to the computer naturally, because it's your own body movements rather than how fast your mouse can move, as opposed to a grand, like, I can't imagine, I'd love to see what really great RTS gamers, what kind of a VR game they would like to play, where there's a lot of frantic movement that is not maybe.
Oh, they love the micro. Love that micro. Yeah. As long as it's responsive, right? Clicks per second. What is it? Movements per second? How many units you can grab per second? Yeah, it's going to be a lot of dexterity required.
Right.
Next, you and I both spent probably the most time at this event playing a very highly anticipated game from Insomniac. Yeah. And coming out next year, it's Stormland.
It's their 4th VR game. So they have a lot of experience going into this. Their first 3 were smaller games, right? They were tests to see what worked and what didn't, and I think they learned a lot about that. And this game is far and away the longest development period, and it's a much bigger game. It's an open world game, as we've seen from some of the streams already, and we've seen the locomotion already in streams, but now we got to try it, and I would say it's really successful. Like, it's a lot of fun. You are a robot in this futuristic, space world. You're formerly some sort of a service bot, right? Sure. And you're mysteriously come back to life, and so there's an amnesia thing. You're trying to figure out what's going on, but you move throughout the world by using the magnetics of this space and your ability as a robot. So you can climb up walls, and you can launch yourself off of it. And it feels great to do that. And when you're in the air, you put your hands out in front of you, and you kind of Superman around, and if you put your hands down, you go down to the ground faster. You can glide on these clouds, right? So like the whole world exists up in the sky, and there's this layer of clouds. And when you're on top of that, you can almost jet ski, right? Like, you go much faster, you can turbo boost, you can even shoot the ground, make a ramp come out of it, and fly off of that.
This is the first game in VR that really feels like open world. Like, yes, there will be instances, and there'll be loading between of the levels of the Stormland. Yeah. But the combination of grappling, flying, and traditional thumbstick locomotion, walk around locomotion, all of that services the type of combat and engagement you'll have in exploration in this game.
So there are guns that are lying around, and you get new ammo by finding other guns and dismantling them.
Yep.
They appear at your holster, so it's that familiar grabbing the gun down here, or grabbing, is there
over the shoulder.
Is there a shield in
on
this
the
hand?
side, yeah.
And so you can shield and shoot, and that of course feels great, and the robots that you're fighting are, huge hulking things, and they explode well, they feel good to shoot.
The animations, it looks fantastic. It's using the same engine as Insomniac's Spider-Man game that just came on PS4. So they know how to make a really AAA open world game. The thing that I'm curious about is how much, how vertical will this be? Like the level we played, there are 3 towers you're supposed to explore.
Right.
And the first island that we went to, at least I went to, I wasn't thinking in terms of grabbing things and climbing. I was using my thumbs, like, how do I walk around the lava here and get around the path? Very quickly I realized you can just grab anything.
It's all about that. And we thought about that after we played the latest Legend of Zelda game, right?
Yeah.
Well, how can people make adventure games nowadays anymore? Because now you have to climb everything. And so these guys realized that, and they made a VR game. And I was talking to one of the devs after I played it. Apparently early in development, that wasn't in there.
Right.
And then one of the developers added it in just to say, like, this would be cool, check it out. Of course, it
works.
Once people tried it, they couldn't go back.
Yeah, and getting very, very high up, climbing high up and holding on, looking down, it's exhilarating. It's like, I don't want to let go because I want to make sure I grab the next thing properly.
You can also play it stealthily. You climb up there, you lean around the corner, get in the right spot, and you pick them off. What I was excited by is I didn't realize that this game was sort of a roguelike, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Every week, everyone's game will shift a little bit and become slightly different.
Yeah, there's an asynchronous aspect. If you want to just play the quote-unquote single player,
right?
The things you do in the Stormland will contribute to the community pool, and that will change everyone's game.
But what everyone's game does shift together, right? And then it's sort of like that for a week, and then a week later it shifts again. So rather than every time you play the game it being slightly different, you get a slightly different game every week. And the goal is to get as far in the game as possible. As far as I can tell, there isn't an ending. Like, it just gets harder and harder the higher you go. Because at the end of every level, you take an elevator to the next tier. Right? And you can play it cooperatively. That's going to be awesome. And I understand that the enemy difficulty won't change so much if you do play it cooperatively. So playing co-op will allow you to go much farther.
I really want to play at least, hopefully, more than 2 people co-op with this. I feel like 3 people in this would be really, really cool. The weapons felt awesome. There was a submachine gun, a sniper rifle. Like in Vox Machinae, the sniper rifle pops up, a zoom in.
I didn't get to use that. I'm jealous.
And you have to hold your controller steady because sniping in VR actually is not easy. So very excited. I don't know how they want this to be the game everyone plays in VR.
Right.
And it needs to reach that critical mass. I don't know what else they have to do because mechanically the game feels good right now. So hopefully what the next year of development will be not only polished, but adding content, building out these levels. They're not procedurally generated, but like designing really cool worlds for us to explore with each level of the Stormland.
The final game that we got to play there was Space Junkies. Now we got to play this a year ago, maybe a little bit less. It's Ubisoft's 6th VR game.
Now, take that with a grain of salt, because I don't think it's the same team of people working on 6 games.
Fair enough.
They're a publisher.
Right. Now this is, I wanted to initially describe this as the Echo Combat competitor, right? Like the Echo Arena proved that there was this ZeroG genre within the VR platform. Like within, like you could do that as a game, style. And so they were doing the same thing, but with weapons now. But it really is quite different than Echo Combat. It's more Quake-like. It's more about just run and gun, and less about taking, I mean, obviously you take cover, but it's more about just spawn, get out there, find a good weapon, get some headshots in, and then, find the power up, get some health, maybe find another weapon. It's a ton of fun. I mean, we were playing 3v3.
Yep.
And when you would take out the other team, that just felt so good. And it's in your face.
It reminded me in many ways of the game Gunther, which also tried to be like the VR equivalent of Quake. But that one suffered from teleportation, which made a lot of those close encounters not a ton of fun. The locomotion here is in ZeroG, but you are not grabbing onto things.
Exactly.
It's more actually like Descent, where you need to move in all 6 axes.
Yeah, so you're using both joysticks in an interesting new way, where you're moving, in one plane with one joystick and the other plane with the other, going up and down. And initially, it takes some learning, but you get the hang of it.
Yeah.
And we did at this demo. I'm sure within a day or two, it's going to become second nature.
And just like people who played Quake in the old days, or play, Rec Room, Paintball,
Yeah.
right now, it's about knowing the map, knowing the respawns, the places where the armor and the health and the weapons spawn.
Right.
And you have to keep on constantly moving.
And it's also learning about the strategies. And I found what was a lot of fun was just going up, because nobody looks up.
Right, right.
So you can just be up above everyone, picking people off, and they'll be like, where's that coming from? Death from above.
Yeah, very satisfying to get those headshots from far away.
Yeah.
We played a couple maps, some of them very big maps where you're just zooming through and trying to look around and find the person hiding behind that object really far away. It's a pretty close quarters indoor, like almost like the inside of a spaceship kind of map. But you're right, very much like Quake, and I think VR needs that type of fast pace, very easy to jump in and play for 20 minutes and have a lot of fun.
It has a fun element that reminds me of Robo Recall as well, where that was all about words coming out of enemies and
aesthetic,
arcade announcers and everything. This kind of feels like that. It's fun. It's just a fun game, and I know that they've been doing some closed betas recently. I look forward to playing this more when it comes out.
Yeah, from the time we saw it last year at OC4.
It's come a long way.
Come a long way, and I think probably the biggest surprise for us in terms of things we're looking forward to. So that's just a sampling of some of the games that I'm sure Oculus will be showing at OC5, where we are right now. And we are there filming more videos. We'll have developer interviews in the coming weeks, and hopefully some hands-on with whatever new thing they announce coming later this week. Thanks for watching. Post in the comments below any questions you have about these games, and we'll see you shortly.
Bye.